Hello, welcome to Cousin Jack Carves. Today we're going to go through a short video and I'll be describing the process that I use to go from a concept, an idea to get to the finished carving. And I wanted to talk about this because some beginner carvers, novice carvers, even experienced carvers, things happen along the way. And sometimes it can be frustrating. This particular project I'll be sharing with you, there were 7 different times that something broke. And I had to make decisions about whether to redesign, whether to repair, you name it. So let's take a little closer look. So here's a little bit of the drawing from the original concept from my carving journal. This started out with an idea for a gift for my grandson for his birthday. I wanted to have this hillbilly, right? He's propped up against a tree stump here. And, you can see that he's got a little bit of a jug back here on the stump, and on the other end of his fishing line, he's got a fish there. But of course, he's passed out, and he's not even aware that he's got a fish on there. And I wanted to make sure and have one of his knees bent. Part of the original design was to bend this knee so that I could rest that cane pole against the knee to get the angle I wanted for the pole, and then of course the fish at the other end. So I decided that I wanted the fish to wiggle, just like a real fish. And to do that, I had to embed some magnets inside that fish and then also inside the water, the surface of the water, below the surface there. So it would wiggle around. I wanted it to resemble a real fish. And you can see here my notes that the tail of that fish and all the fins, they were carved from an avocado pit and glued on later. I used a dowel through the fish's tail to build a swivel, and you can see the top view of it over here. To build a swivel so that tail would wiggle independently of the rest of the fish. So, and you can see I wanted to have this somewhat realistic looking, sort of like a largemouth bass. So I decided to have the mouth open, and then I would have this brass screw eye to represent, the fish hook. And you can see my notes here that this particular fish was 2¼ inches long and about 1 inch in height. Here's that top view again, and like I say, I wanted to enhance the wiggling motion for that tail. So I designed it to move freely, and it was really a delicate process to drill that hole through the body of the fish and then also through the separate piece of tail that I'd carved from the avocado pit. It was pretty delicate. And you can also see here that I used bamboo. So to build that dowel, I used an old bamboo chopstick, whittled it down to size. And then I changed my mind. The sleeping hillbilly became a guy named Norm, who's so entranced with his cell phone that he becomes clueless about the fish wiggling on the end of his line. And I also decided to add a squirrel, and I'll show you how that gets incorporated. I added a bag of chips, a coffee cup, and basically with this design change, I also cut out the head and carved that separately. So you can see the body right here. My original drawing for this redesign, the distance from the top of the shoulders down to the waist is equal to the distance from the waist to the knee, and then also the knee to the bottom of the foot. And you can also see that he's got that cell phone right there in his hand. So there's Norm. I wanted the face to have this somewhat perplexing smile, and I wanted his eyes looking downward, like he's staring and sort of in this trance, looking at his cell phone. And the pattern for the head here is a pattern that's used by Lynn Doty, who's on YouTube. You can check him out. This particular pattern, I scaled it down so that the head is 2.5 inches high and 1 3/4 from the nose to the back of the head. So I decided that this squirrel would be sitting on the tree stump right behind Norm, and he's going to be eating Norm's potato chips. Of course, Norm is clueless. This little guy is 1 inch from front to back and 1.5 inches high, so pretty small. And I designed it with his hands up close to his mouth right here because he'll be chewing on Norm's chips, and I'll show you that in a second. So here's a look over Norm's shoulder. He has his cane pole in his hand, his cell phone's in the other hand, and the first thing that broke on me was that cell phone. Yeah, I originally tried to carve it with, the original wood with the cell phone in his hand. It broke. It was pretty fragile, and I knew it was fragile. And of course, while I was working on another part of the body, I, squeezed too hard with my hand, and the phone broke loose. And you can see here that I carved separately a cell phone, and give you a scale here with this quarter, just how small that cell phone is. You got a little emoji going on there and some sort of texting back and forth. So I just grabbed a piece of scrap wood and made that new cell phone. And Norm was very happy with the new cell phone. But somewhere along the way, Norm also lost a finger. That happened. I was able to find it in my pile of chips, and then I glued it back on. So here you can see this angle of Norm's head, which is pretty extreme. And not only is it angled looking downward, it's also to the side, which you'll see a little bit later. The tree stump that's being used over here is made from an old Christmas tree. The coffee cup is from a piece of basswood, and you can see the squirrel here having some fun and eating chips. So the bag of chips, I guess right over here, I made those out of basswood chips. I soaked them in some yellow paint for a while. After they dried out, I just mixed them up with some Elmer's glue to make this sort of a glob. And I stuffed them down into the bag, which is also, it's carved out of basswood. And I had hollowed out the top. I wanted the chips to look like, they were popping up out of the bag. So I'll show you another part that broke. The collar of Norm's shirt. That broke 3 times. Always remember, glue is your friend. So I also changed my fish design along the way. Instead of a somewhat realistic looking fish, I decided to go with this cartoon style. And you can see that I had this big sort of a smiling mouth, and the eyes are now this cartoony sort of an eye. And as I mentioned earlier, all the fins were carved from an avocado pit and then glued on later. So another thing that broke, this fin right here, this pectoral fin. We have 3 cats in our house. They decided that they really liked playing with that fish. They liked it so much that they got too rough with it and broke it. I fixed that, and then on another day, my grandson was playing with the fish. He dropped it, and the tail broke off. Well, it was an accident, and I said, okay, and I fixed it. So the point is, things are going to break, right? Whittlers, carvers, it's going to happen. Just roll with the flow, and you'll get by. So in this slide, it's just a little closer look at the swivel, how that tail moves independently. And that shows up in, I have a brief video that helps us illustrate that. So this is 44 seconds worth of video. that features the finished project and demonstrates the effect of the magnets to get the fish to wiggle like a real fish. And you can see this one. It's on my website on the YouTube channel. Like I said, it's very short. So thanks for watching, everyone. I hope this helped you. Coming up next, I'll have a video that will provide some instruction. I want to do a tutorial for folks about carving a smiling snowman. It's a project for beginners, but it's a project that everyone can enjoy. So we'll see you next time.